Hey everyone, this is a quick tutorial to teach you how to render glass with alpha and transparency in Maya and Arnold. It felt like I was looking for the answer to this question for an eternity, but hopefully this video helps some of you out. Keep in mind that this method does remove refractions from glass objects. I'll show you how to set this up the right way, but real quickly, I'll show you the very basic steps to get transparency working. So here's a very basic scene I set up in Maya. I have a glass cup, a floor, an HDRI, and light off camera lighting my glass. Now, if I check on my alpha channel, clearly everything is white because everything is filling the frame. So to make sure the HDRI doesn't show up, I want to click on the HDRI, go down to the visibility under the shape node, and set the visibility to 0 for the camera. So now, if that loads, you'll see that the HDRI is no longer showing up, but we still see the outline of the cup and the floor. So if we switch visibility back to our RGB channel, you can see everything is working, but we have all like the reflections and refractions of the background behind it still visible in the glass. And if I jump to After Effects real quick, you can kind of see that regardless of what background I put it on, you can still see the original background that I used to light it. So to fix this, you have to do a few things. The first thing that you have to do is set the transmission for the object that's refracting behind the glass to 0. You have to set it completely to 0, otherwise this doesn't work. And you would think that that would solve the problem, but it does not. All this is doing is saying that this is not visible in any transmissive object. The next thing we have to do is select our glass object and make sure that under the shape node in the Arnold tab that opaque is unchecked. The next thing you have to do is go to the glass shader for the object and scroll down to the transmission section and make sure transmit AOVs is checked. This is very important, otherwise this won't work. And now if you check the alpha channel, you have an alpha channel for your glass. Now, like I said in the beginning, this does remove refractions. So all these little dark areas on the glass that were originally refraction are now completely transparent. So to demonstrate what that looks like, if I go back into After Effects, it'll render out completely transparent so we can see through it, which is great. But if I were to add like a photo behind it, for example, it wouldn't refract correctly. Like this doesn't operate how it should. So use this technique sparingly. This is like really, really quick if you want to get glass just kind of lit indirectly, but not refracting anything. But the proper way to set this up, if you really need that transmission alpha, but still need the refractions and want control over everything, especially for compositing, is to set this up in render layers and use overrides to achieve these settings. And I'll show you how to set that up right now. To set up the render layers, what you have to do is you click on the render layers tab, which will open up the render layers window. You would create a new layer. We'll just do the cup for now. So we'll call this cup. We will create a new collection. We'll call this glass cup. Okay, now that we have the collection made, we're going to click, select the things that we want to add to that collection, middle mouse drag, or add them this way. And then with the sky dome selected, I'm going to create an absolute override for the camera and the transmission, because in this case, it's visible in both. So we're going to drag that in, and we're going to middle mouse drag and click that. And so it creates an absolute override for each. And we're going to set these to 0. So this is saying that for this layer and this object, I want them to not show up. It's important to note that when we're making overrides, what we're doing is essentially telling that render layer what we don't want to see in it. So when we want to isolate just glass, we don't want to see anything in the refractions. We don't want to see anything that's like behind it. So if there's an object that's behind the glass, we can make overrides for these things, set the visibility of those objects in their respective shape nodes to 0. And then that way we get just the glass on its own, and we can later use that as the matte. And this is great because you can render these out and you get separate layers, and then you can use them for compositing after. I've already done this, and in After Effects you can see what's happening. So I have my master layer with everything, but then I also have my cup isolated, and it has no refraction. And if I click the alpha channel, you can see right through it. And this is really helpful because, as you can see in our beauty layer, everything, if I select the alpha channel, everything is alpha'd. But if I wanted to use that layer and set this to alpha, I get the alpha that I need of the glass, which is super cool, super helpful. So a good practical example of why this is useful is, let's say I wanted to isolate the glass and colorize it. I've already made a matte for it, so I could throw on hue and saturation. and set it to colorize and bring the saturation up, change it around. And now I've changed the color of the glass without having to jump into my 3D software. So I hope that tip was helpful for you. It took me a while, like I said, to figure all that out, but this is a nice comprehensive guide into dealing with glass in Arnold. Arnold can be kind of complicated in the fact that all the settings seem to be kind of all over the place. There isn't just one button that does one thing, but overrides are really helpful, render layers are really helpful, and I hope this video was helpful. And if it was, give me a like and subscribe for more. See you next time.